Hey, how's it going? Let me ask you something. What comes to mind when you hear the word sea monster? Some massive creature rising from the depths, with a cold stare and a body built to kill? Well, check this out. In the 19th century, something eerily close to that was pulled straight from stone by human hands. A creature so bizarre it seemed impossible to be real. Yet it was. It wasn't legend. It wasn't fiction. It was the Plesiosaurus. But what was this thing exactly? A dinosaur? A dragon? A scientific mistake? Today, we're diving deep into this story, where truth, myth, and fossils blend into one of the greatest mysteries Earth has ever left us. And I promise you this, by the end of this video, you'll never look at the ocean floor the same way again. So let's get into it. We all know the deep, dark oceans hold fascinating secrets. For thousands of years, stories about strange creatures rising from the depths have captured human imagination. But nothing compares to the excitement that swept through humanity in the 19th century, when, for the first time in history, a real sea monster stepped out of legend and into the realm of science. Picture a time when dinosaurs were barely understood, when most people still believed the Earth was only a few thousand years old, and extinct creatures felt more like myth than reality. In that world, the discovery of the Plesiosaurus hit like a bolt of lightning in a starless night. Shocking, unexpected, and impossible to ignore. It all began on the shores of Lyme Regis, a small coastal town in England along the English Channel. There, the steep cliffs held, beneath layers of Jurassic rock, the secrets of a past so ancient it defied comprehension. It was the early 1800s, and a simple walk by the sea could turn into a discovery powerful enough to shake the foundations of science. In that mud and shale, the outline of a creature appeared, one that didn't fit into any known category. It had a broad, flat body, for strong paddle-like limbs, and an absurdly long neck. When the first fragments were recovered and assembled, scientists of the time were stunned. Was this a new species, or an elaborate hoax? The creature was named Plesiosaurus, meaning near lizard, an attempt to link it to known reptiles. But let's be real. This thing didn't look like anything anyone had ever seen. Its strange, almost alien form sparked fierce debates among naturalists, religious scholars, and curious onlookers alike. Some called it fake. Others swore it was a dragon. But for the first time in human history, people were staring face to face with a real inhabitant of the Jurassic seas. And at the center of it all stood an unlikely figure, Mary Anning, a young English girl with no formal education, who began collecting fossils as a child to help support her family. She not only found the first nearly complete Plesiosaurus fossil in 1823, but also made other discoveries that would forever change paleontology. At just 12 years old, she had already uncovered the first full ichthyosaurus skeleton. Later, she would dig up the first pterosaur fossil found outside Germany, along with several then unknown fossil fish. All this during a time when women weren't even allowed in scientific societies. Despite being ignored or dismissed for being a poor woman, Mary Anning quietly became a respected name among the top scientists of her time. Darwin read about her discoveries. Richard Owen, who would later coin the term dinosaur, drew upon her findings. Her legacy is so powerful that today she is recognized as one of the most important figures in the history of paleontology, even though it took over a century for her name to get the spotlight it deserved. More than just a fossil, the Plesiosaurus became a symbol of how little we truly knew about life before us. A reminder that Earth's past is far more vast, strange, and fascinating than most dared to imagine. And just like that, in the mud, the waves, and the Victorian ignorance, the first true sea monster of science was born. And hey, if you're already loving this story as much as I am, go ahead and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. There are a lot more bizarre, real, and jaw-dropping creatures coming your way. Let's keep going. So, if the creature's appearance was already impressive, the confusion about what it actually was led to one of paleontology's biggest mix-ups. Was the Plesiosaurus a dinosaur or not? Buckle up, because that's exactly what we're about to find out. When the image of a Plesiosaurus fossil was first shown to the public, many people didn't hesitate. It's an aquatic dinosaur, And honestly, the confusion made sense. The creature looked like a bizarre mix of crocodile, dragon, and snake neck, a true Jurassic Frankenstein. But the truth is, the Plesiosaurus was never actually a dinosaur. Technically speaking, dinosaurs belong to a very specific group of land-dwelling reptiles that lived during the Mesozoic era. They had unique anatomical traits, like legs positioned directly under their bodies, which set them apart from other reptiles of the time. Plesiosaurus, on the other hand, was a marine reptile. It belonged to the order Sauropterygia, a separate group of creatures adapted to life in the water. These animals first appeared during the Triassic period and ruled the seas for millions of years. While dinosaurs dominated the land, plesiosaurs swam freely through the oceans, with bodies built to glide through water with incredible agility. This marine lineage was like an army of biological submarines, efficient, silent, and deadly. The confusion with dinosaurs only deepened as science developed throughout the 19th century. To put it in perspective, the word dinosaur wasn't even coined until 1842 by Richard Owen, almost 2 decades after the discovery of the Plesiosaurus. So when the world first saw this long-necked creature, the idea of what made something a dinosaur hadn't even been formally defined. Today, with advanced technology and a much deeper understanding of Mesozoic reptile anatomy and evolution, we know that the Plesiosaurus is as far from being a dinosaur as a whale is from a shark. They lived at the same time, but followed completely different evolutionary paths. And realizing that is key to understanding how complex the prehistoric world really was. So next time someone says they saw a dinosaur at the bottom of a lake, maybe in a story about the Loch Ness Monster, just remember, if it looks like a Plesiosaurus, it's already off to a bad start. Now that we know what the Plesiosaurus wasn't, it's time to understand what it really was, and why its appearance caused so much confusion. Its body was a true contradiction in fossil form. Small by Jurassic standards, about 11 feet long, with most of that being just neck, the Plesiosaurus was far from a marine giant. Did you know that? Today, many people imagine this creature as a behemoth, something worthy of facing off with whales or mosasaurs, but the reality is very different. It was actually smaller than a typical sedan. The most impressive feature was definitely its neck. Just to give you an idea, this neck was made up of over 30 cervical vertebrae, an extremely high number for any vertebrate. No other known marine reptile, and no dinosaur either, had a structure like that. But here's the question that's baffled scientists for over 150 years. How exactly did it use that neck? Was it flexible like a snake's, able to twist in all directions? Or was it stiff like a rod, helping stabilize the body in water? Recent biomechanical studies, including 3D modeling and computer simulations, suggest it probably couldn't bend much, making the neck more of a stealthy weapon, used to get close to prey without moving the rest of its body. And more than that, contrary to what many think, the long neck wasn't a disadvantage. Quite the opposite. It allowed the Plesiosaurus to hide in underwater shadows and extend only its neck to snatch fish and cephalopods, like a living spear, a hunting mechanism that was quiet, precise, and surprisingly effective. But its anatomy kept defying logic, and because of that, it fueled both myths and scientific missteps. The neck itself, often exaggerated in 19th century museum reconstructions, made the Plesiosaurus appear way larger than it really was. In illustrations from that era, it was shown as a giant snake-turtle hybrid, something we now know was far from the truth. This distorted view was passed down through generations. Even today, in movies, comics, and games, the Plesiosaurus is portrayed as a massive, aggressive beast, when in reality, it was a moderate-sized predator, agile and efficient, but without the over-the-top drama that pop culture insists on adding. By the way, if you had that wrong image of the Plesiosaurus in your head and just learned something new, go ahead and smash that like button. Let's spread some prehistoric facts that actually hold water, shall we? And here's the craziest part. Even the greatest scientists didn't escape the confusion. That body, so far outside the norm, still manages to fool people, even centuries later. But if its body was strange, the way it moved was nothing short of fascinating. While other marine reptiles, like ichthyosaurs, moved with undulating motions, similar to fish or dolphins, the Plesiosaurus had a completely different approach. It used all four of its flipper-shaped limbs in perfect sync, like the stroke of a sea turtle in a deep dive. In practice, it was like flying through water currents, propelled by wide, controlled movements. This type of motion is called underwater flight propulsion, and for a long time, scientists didn't even think it was possible. Lab tests and robotic simulations later showed that this strategy wasn't just viable, it was incredibly efficient and stable. The Plesiosaurus could glide long distances with minimal effort, or speed up with sharp movements to strike its prey. A true Jurassic-era jet ski. And there's more. By using all four flippers together, it could pull off smooth turns, controlled dives, and even float silently in shallow waters. That explains why it was able to hunt in coastal regions, lakes, and inland seas, places where thick aquatic vegetation made stealth and agility essential. In short, the Plesiosaurus wasn't just weird, it was brilliantly adapted. A swimming machine, built to ambush, maneuver, and vanish without a trace. A quiet monster, but a deadly one. Picture yourself swimming in shallow waters, where sunlight breaks into scattered rays, lighting up suspended particles. A silent world, almost still. Then, something appears from below. Not a violent strike, but a subtle, almost invisible movement. That's the Plesiosaurus using not brute force, but surgical precision. Because beyond its clever anatomy, the Plesiosaurus was likely a predator driven by vision. Its eyes were large and positioned on the sides of its head, giving it a wide field of view. It didn't need to turn its body to detect movement around it. It could simply move its eyes or neck. In an environment where visibility was often poor, this visual edge made all the difference. But the most intriguing part is the shape of its eyes. Fossil studies show that it had relatively well-developed eye sockets, suggesting it could gather light very effectively even in darker settings. In other words, it wasn't just agile. It was also a low-light hunting specialist, active in early mornings, dusk, or rocky seabeds where prey like to hide in the shadows. And its menu was well-defined. Its long, thin, inward-curving teeth point to a diet made up mostly of small fish, squid, and belemnites, a type of extinct cephalopod common in the Jurassic seas. Some paleontologists believe it could even ambush faster prey with quick neck strikes, taking advantage of its stealthy body. No monstrous feasts here. The Plesiosaurus fed with precision, not spectacle. Combine that with its smooth movement and neck like a drawn spear, and the Plesiosaurus could sneak up on schools of fish without stirring the water, pick a target, and strike at the perfect moment. And with those long, slender teeth made for gripping slippery prey, it didn't need to chew. Just catch and swallow whole. Can you believe the level of accuracy this creature had? It wasn't the kind of predator that caused panic when it showed up. It was the kind you never saw coming. The silent terror of the shallows. And here's the wildest part, all that with a brain that was, by comparison, embarrassingly small. Scientists estimate the Plesiosaurus had a brain about the size of a walnut, maybe even smaller than a plum depending on the individual. Let that sink in. We're talking about a creature over 11 feet long with a brain structure that seems laughably tiny. Something that, at first glance, doesn't match the precision of its attacks or the grace of its movement. Which brings us to the big question. How could such an efficient predator have such a tiny brain? The answer might lie in extreme specialization. The Plesiosaurus didn't need to be smart like a dolphin or an octopus. It didn't rely on complex strategies, teamwork, or problem-solving. It was an executor. Its brain was a direct system, sharpened by time, built to do exactly what it needed to do: swim, see, judge distance, and strike. Nothing more, nothing less. Maybe the brilliance of the Plesiosaurus wasn't in its mind, but in the flawless way its body, senses, and reflexes worked together, like a prehistoric machine finely tuned by millions of years of trial and error. A predator shaped by time itself. And the crazy part? Even with all that uniqueness, it was just one of many species thriving in the oceans of its era. The Plesiosaurus wasn't alone, and that's exactly what we'll dive into next. But hey, tell me something first. What part of this creature blew your mind the most? The neck? The birth? Or the brain the size of a walnut? Drop it in the comments. I really want to know what shocked you the most. Let's keep going. When we talk about plesiosaurs, a lot of people think we're referring to a single animal, the plesiosaurus itself. But the truth is that name eventually turned into a catch-all label for any long-necked marine creature from the Mesozoic era. In reality, Plesiosaurus was just a modest member of a massive, diverse lineage, one that, in many cases, included species far more impressive than it. The order Plesiosauria included dozens of different genera, with a wide range of body sizes, shapes, and hunting strategies. Some distant relatives, like Elasmosaurus, could grow over 46 feet long, with a neck that seemed to stretch forever. Others, like Liopleurodon, left jaws dropping with their size and ferocity, reaching more than 13,000 pounds, with massive jaws that looked designed to crush anything in their path. These differences show that the world of plesiosaurs was far more complex than just a bunch of long-necked reptiles swimming around. There were enormous, agile predators like Kronosaurus, with teeth that rivaled those of a T-Rex. There were also compact, robust forms with flat skulls or long snouts like modern dolphins. And of course, there was Plesiosaurus, the most famous of them all, but far from the most dominant. In fact, many fossils you see today in toys, misidentified museum displays, or even popular movies aren't actually Plesiosaurus. They belong to other plesiosaurs that have been confused, combined, or heavily stylized based on outdated reconstructions. Chances are you've seen a Plesiosaurus portrayed as a colossal snake-bodied sea monster with a dragon-like roar, but the real animal was much more restrained and way more real. So why did Plesiosaurus get all the fame? The answer lies in history. It was the first of its lineage to be scientifically described and gained attention right at the dawn of modern paleontology. It became the most recognizable face of a group that would later explode in diversity and impact. It turned into a symbol of anything long, weird, and aquatic. But in truth, it was just the tip of the iceberg. And as scientists began digging deeper into the plesiosaur family tree, another mystery emerged. How exactly did these creatures reproduce? For a long time, researchers assumed plesiosaurs laid eggs, like modern sea turtles. But there was a big problem with that idea. How could such a heavy, fully aquatic animal drag itself onto land to nest? Biomechanically, it didn't add up. It wasn't until 2011 that a groundbreaking discovery changed everything. Paleontologists found a spectacular fossil, the skeleton of a female plesiosaur with a single fossilized embryo inside her body. That pointed to something incredible. These animals didn't lay eggs. They gave birth to live young, just like modern marine mammals such as whales and dolphins. Yes, plesiosaurs were viviparous. And more than that, evidence suggests they didn't produce large clutches like land reptiles. Instead, they likely gave birth to just one offspring at a time, big and relatively well-developed. This hints at the possibility of some kind of parental care after birth, an incredibly rare behavior among reptiles. This completely changes how we see these animals. They weren't just hunting machines. They were complex creatures with advanced reproductive strategies and possibly more developed social bonds than we ever imagined. The creature that, for so long, was seen as an emotionless prehistoric beast might have actually been a careful, strategic mother, surprisingly dedicated to the survival of her young. And that reminds us of something. Even the strangest monsters from the past can carry, beneath their scales, an instinct that transcends time. The instinct to protect the next generation. But not even that instinct was enough to save them from the fate Earth had in store, a slow and inevitable disappearance. Contrary to what many believe, plesiosaurs didn't vanish suddenly in some cataclysmic event. Their extinction didn't happen with the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs around 66 million years ago. Plesiosaurs had already been in decline long before that. During the late Cretaceous, Earth's oceans underwent drastic changes. Sea levels rose and fell dramatically, ocean currents shifted, and food chains began to collapse in several regions. With the rise of other marine predators, like mosasaurs, more modern sharks, and incredibly fast predatory fish, plesiosaurs began to lose territory, prey, and their edge. What had once been a nearly uncontested reign became a brutal battlefield of competition. And in this new landscape, with fewer resources and more rivals, plesiosaurs gradually began to disappear, species by species, ocean by ocean. By the time the asteroid struck, there weren't many of them left. The impact was the final blow, but their extinction had already been written, quietly, in the depths of the sea. And yet, they never completely vanished, because even today, Plesiosaurus lives on in the glass cases of the world's greatest museums. If you want to see up close the animal that defied logic, inspired legends, fooled scientists, and changed the course of paleontology, you just need to know where to look. Plesiosaurus fossils, especially those of the species Plesiosaurus dolichoderus, are among the best preserved of the group and are housed in some of the world's most prestigious scientific collections. The most iconic specimen is on display at the Natural History Museum in London, where a complete and beautifully mounted skeleton, discovered by Mary Anning in 1823, still holds a place of honor in the Jurassic Fossil Gallery. To this day, it remains one of the museum's most visited exhibits. Another important specimen is at the Sedgwick Museum of Earth Sciences at the University of Cambridge, which holds several plesiosaur fossils collected during the 19th century, including well-preserved vertebrae and skulls. In Germany, the Stuttgart Museum of Natural History holds detailed fossils and casts, while in France, the Paris Natural History Museum preserves specimens collected as early as the 1800s. In North America, fossils attributed to the Plesiosaurus genus, mostly replicas of the British specimen, are on display at the Royal Ontario Museum in Canada and the American Museum of Natural History in New York, with exhibitions that help contextualize the entire plesiosaur lineage. In short, the remains of Plesiosaurus live on, carefully preserved behind glass, inspiring a new generation of scientists and dreamers. Each fossil is a fragment of an ancient ocean. Each bone, a window into a time when monsters swam through shadows and left their story written in stone. If you enjoyed this trip into the past and want to see more incredible stories like this, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Drop a like and leave a comment below telling us what you'd like to see next. There's still a lot of prehistory left for us to dig up. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.